Welcome back to the Our View podcast. On today's episode, I welcome my guest, Anna Gouker. Anna is an author, speaker, and podcaster. Join our conversation as she shows us how to lead the way in elevating conversations about unconventional leadership and innovative solutions to the big problems of today. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Our View podcast, where we educate, raise awareness, and change the tone of conversation about disabilities. I'm very happy to welcome my guest today to the podcast. My guest today is Anna Gouker. And so I'm very excited to have you on the podcast today, Anna. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I've been mentioning a lot of times on more recent episodes of my podcast that I have connected with a lot of new people who have agreed to do interviews through the app Clubhouse, and then also through there's a group on Facebook, a Facebook group called Find a Guest, Be a Guest. And then also through my social media sites, a lot of people have been recognizing and viewing my content there and reaching out to ask to be on the podcast. Anna, you are one of those people. And I'm very happy to have you join us today. So, if you could, can you give the audience a brief introduction as to who you are? Who is Anna?
Well, let's see. I am originally from a small town in Illinois. Um, it's a town of like 4,000 people. And I moved to the Madison area of Wisconsin about 10 years ago. And I like to say that Wisconsin sort of adopted me, um, as I really fell in love with the people here and really fell in love with the whole vibe of enthusiasm for life and nature and making your voice heard. I was born with a neuromuscular disability, and it's called spinal muscular atrophy. And it means that I have general muscle weakness throughout my body, and I've always depended on a motorized wheelchair to move around the world. And that experience really motivated me to be passionate about disability rights and really advancing services and quality of life issues for people with disabilities. So when I moved to Madison, I did so to start grad school at UW Madison and got my master's in rehabilitation counseling. And since then, I've graduated and worked for several years in human services. And most recently, I came out with a book called Don't Ask Permission to Fly. And it is a collection of essays about my life, observations, and some of the people that have impacted me the most.
That's awesome. I loved that you majored in rehabilitation counseling. That's really great. Um, so what can you talk a little bit more about your disability diagnosis and how it impacts your life? I know you said you use the motorized wheelchair. Can you just talk a little bit more about how your disability diagnosis, what it is, and how it impacts your life.
Well, I was diagnosed with SMA when I was about 8 months old,
Hmm.
and I actually was diagnosed after my brother. I have an older brother who was diagnosed when he was about 2 years old, and that was just before I was born. And they told my parents um, that, well, actually, I think he was 1 year old. It was like just before his first birthday that he was diagnosed, and then they told him he would likely not live past two, and then um, it was the same for me when I was born. I was about, yeah, less than a year when I was diagnosed, and my mom said she knew that I had SMA when I was 6 months old, but I was not officially diagnosed until a couple of months later. And I mean, everyone who has a disability has a very different experience with it. And I think that for me, I had an experience where disability and having SMA and using a wheelchair is all I ever knew. So I didn't have that adjustment to go through. However, I have experienced a gradual uh, increase in my limitation and ability to move my arms around. So I have had to go through some adjustments, but I really think that the biggest way disability has impacted me is how other people view me and how I engage with the world and my own struggle not to let assumptions of the outside world about me impact the way I see myself or my own capabilities, that I stay true to what I know to be true for myself. And that's really why I wrote the book, because I feel like that struggle is something that everyone goes through in some capacity. That internal dilemma of how do I keep perception of others out of my own assumptions or feelings about my future and my place in the world. So I really hope to help more people with that.
That is so true. What you mentioned, how other people perceive you, and I know I've experienced it as well. Um, I guess the box that people like to put us in as people who live with disabilities,
Exactly.
yeah, it can really be, if we let it, it can really be harmful to us if we let
Mm-hmm.
those perceptions, seep into, what we were told by our friends and our family and our parents, that we're able to do a lot of things. But the outside world, who don't know us, who just, they see you in your motorized wheelchair, they see me in my manual wheelchair, and they make assumptions about us that are not true. And uh, you mentioned you have a degree, and I also have a degree, but it's those old perceptions and stereotypes where people believe that just because we have a disability, that we're unable to learn, and that we're unable to get the college degrees and the master's degrees and things like that. So it's really important that there are people like you in the world who are doing a large part in raising awareness about disabilities and helping, again, like I say, change the tone of conversation about disabilities and people who live with disabilities. So that leads to our next topic, which you've already mentioned. You have a book called Don't Ask Permission to Fly. I love the title. And I love what you said, that it's a series of essays. And could you talk a little bit more about that, and where people are able to find your book, and when it's going to be available, if it's already available, and all the great information about your book, Don't Ask Permission to Fly? Can you just talk about that for a little bit?
It is available. It's
Yeah.
on Amazon right now, and it's in paperback and Kindle form right now. And we are in the process of working on the audiobook, so that will be available soon. Um, yeah, and it really started out as a project that I came up with when I left my first job. I had written a blog for that job about navigating employment as a person with a disability, and I asked them if I could use those blog posts if I ever wanted to come out with a book, and they said yes. And as I went through, I picked out my favorite ones and then really ended up changing a lot of the content and expanding on those few blog posts to make something really entirely different that was a fuller picture about my overall life and growing up and my experiences in school and grade school and people that really influenced me and how I see my own possibilities and things that I might want to accomplish and how I've navigated living on my own and really moving forward with my goals. I ran for public office a couple of years ago in my local county district, and there's an essay about that experience as well as my uh, negative experience getting my wisdom teeth extracted and how I encountered the healthcare system and some of their assumptions about me. So a theme really came clear as I went about developing the book that we are in this constant back and forth struggle between how the world views us and how we view us, and trying to really anchor down in our own truth and making sure that that is our primary focus as we move through the world.
That is a great idea for a book. And I think it's important that people hear all of these experiences that that you have had. And uh, your life is a lot of, as you mentioned, a lot of good things and a lot of not so good things. Like, that's great that you ran for public office, and then uh, the flip side of things, where of how you experience the medical world of things, where it's not always things are not always accessible to us in a lot of places and a lot of parts of the world. And so for you to be willing to share all of that information, those stories with the world in the form of a book. I think it's a great idea, and very excited that you have that out. So everyone, make sure you uh, go to Amazon and buy the book in Kindle and paperback, and stay tuned for the audiobook. Like that's really cool too. I know I enjoy a good audiobook all the time, so I'm definitely looking forward to the audiobook coming out. So, so one of the things that I also know about you through preparing for this conversation is you also are a podcaster, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So, can you talk about your podcast and what your purpose is of what your purpose was for creating the podcast, and where people are able to find the podcast?
My podcast is called Lead the Way with Anna Gouker, and it came out of my experience running for office. I was really in a transition period in that moment of my life. I had left my first job. I had no plan, and I jumped right into this political campaign and put all of my heart and soul into making that the best possible outcome I could. I knew I was an outsider from the beginning and not someone that people were familiar with. I didn't have name recognition. I didn't have political party backing to support me, although they did stay out of, like, they stayed neutral. So that was nice of them, but they had a favorite, that's for sure. And I did not end up winning the seat, but I made a definite splash during the campaign and decided that this notion that people who are not told are born to be in charge should still see themselves as part of the solution to big problems, even if they're not running for office, if they're not on a stage. Everyone has capacity to make a big positive impact in the world. And that's really what happened or what motivated me to start Lead the Way. And I do interviews of local leaders in Wisconsin mostly, but we are talking about branching out a bit more. But we do talk about issues that translate throughout the country, throughout the world, and really try to invite people on the podcast who have a unique background, a unique perspective, or something special that they are offering the community.
Yeah, that's I think it's a great what you again for running for the public office and just wanting to be part of the change that needs to take place, and to let people know that you're out here and you're willing to help out, and again be a part of that change. I think that is very something to really acknowledge, and the fact that you have created the podcast out of that experience to continue talking about issues, and to interview the leaders, and how everybody can again serve in that in such a way that change is being made. I think that is really very important. So thank you. And your podcast it's available on Apple Podcasts and I'm pretty
Yes.
sure everywhere else you can hear any podcast.
Yeah,
I'd
we're
love.
on Apple and Spotify, Google Play, and a few more. But people can also go to annagouker.com.
Great. Yeah. And I've listened to a few episodes, and it's really again it's a very important topics that you're covering, and so thank you for sharing that as well. So to wrap up everything, I like to finish my podcast with a form of the following question, which is what is most misunderstood about your diagnosis or about people with disabilities in general?
I think that could be answered in a lot of different ways. Um, but I think that the thing that I'm always trying to help with is showing people that people with disabilities are fully human. I think that that is a pretty fundamental reality that people don't admit is a thing that we need to embrace more. And we all come in different packages, and I think that people with disabilities are all very unique, and we're all completely, fully human and should be treated that way.
That is such an amazing answer, and it's so true. I know again I've been in Clubhouse, which is an audio app where you talk on the stage, so you literally use your voice to talk. And a lot of discussions have been around surrounding topics related to disabilities. And one of the rooms that I was recently in was talking about this topic and this old stereotype, I guess you could say, that people with disabilities need to be fixed and they need to be
Mm-hmm.
healed and all of those types of things. Where, and I love what you just said. Like, we are fully human, we are complete, we come in different packages, yes, and every diagnosis is different. But like you said before, everybody has something to offer, everybody has something to contribute. And I think that is that's what I would like for people to know. Just because someone has a disability, it doesn't mean like I was born this way. I was literally born this way, as the Lady Gaga song says. And there's nothing. Uh, I was born 40 years ago, so they didn't have the medical advances and medical technology that they have now, where a child with spina bifida, they can do surgery, fetal surgery, before the baby is born to close the hole in the back. They didn't have that 40 years ago. I'm grateful that they do have that for families now. That's a great thing. However, and in addition to that, I should say, me, even with my limited mobility and having to use a wheelchair and the way I have to get around with the braces and the crutches, and you for the way that you have to use your motorized wheelchair to get around, we are human beings. We are fully human, and we are capable of doing things and contributing to society. And I think that is what uh, a big thing that needs to change. That perception of people with disabilities really needs to change to view us in a different way, for sure. So thank you for sharing that answer. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think that that is dead on. I mean, someone was just asking me yesterday because there are new treatments for kids with SMA. And with early intervention, there are amazing things that are able to help newborns not experience symptoms of SMA. And that's really not going to make a complete change for me at this point. There is no cure for SMA for a almost 35-year-old.
Hmm.
And that is a bummer, but it's also not something that I'm going to dwell on or make a focus of my day because I think one of my biggest assets is my unique vantage point and the way that I'm able to observe the world and make connections and distinctions and see the best in people and sometimes the worst in people and have a voice for that. So I'm not going to spend my days weeping about what could have been because I'm here right now and I have something to offer the world.
Absolutely. It is, again, it's great. I'm grateful that, uh, I'm grateful for the medical advances that they have made. It's great. It's just, it's what happens. It's science, and it's the knowledge that people gain throughout the years that is great. And at the same time, as you said, um, I'm not going to, dwell on that for all of my days, and just wish why me, or any of that, or why not me, and all of that, because the way that, again, being born this way has really provided a unique opportunity for me as well to uh, see things differently. You've said it. I'm repeating everything you just said. I know, but it's so true that it has really allowed me to see people in a great way, and as you said, sometimes in a not so great way. Again, I'm repeating everything you just said, and I'm aware of that. But it's so very true that uh, and every person is born in a unique way. Every person has a unique thing to offer the world. So I think that is a great message for this episode, to just stress that, and for the listeners to to just realize that no matter what, no matter if you were born with a condition, if you acquired a disability later in life, everybody is unique, and we all have a place in this world to add something positive to it. So to just make sure that um, no matter what your condition is, with or without a disability, that you use your life to make a positive change in the world. I think that's a very strong message to send for this episode. So thank you for all of your great words that I definitely repeated and will definitely be be using from
Yeah,
here on out.
go
So
for it.
yeah. So, but thank you so much for your time. I appreciate this conversation that we've had, and I definitely know that it will reach the right people who need to hear this positive message. And again, everyone, go out and get Anna's book. Don't ask permission to fly. It's available on Amazon, and I look forward to collaborating with you again soon for something, because we both have great stories to share, and great experiences to talk about. So I look forward to reaching out to you, and getting to do something together again soon.
Yeah. Um, as I was preparing for this interview, my assistant told me, she was like, I think you and Arthur are going to be best friends. I think she was onto something
I
there.
think so
And
too.
for,
Yeah, for sure. It's really it's really great to connect with other people uh, who are doing similar work. And we're in
Yeah,
two different states. Me being in New Jersey, you're in
yeah,
Wisconsin. But it's just very it's important that there are people like us who exist in different places to do
yeah.
the work, because there is work to be done everywhere. Whether you're on the East Coast, the Midwest, the West Coast, the
This is
Northeast, the
such a
Northwest.
good avenue. I mean, podcasting is such a great platform to have your ideas shared. I used to think that having a disability, a few years ago when I was in my 20s and I was living on my own for the first time, I felt like really the most important thing as a person with a disability was for me to be seen out in the world
Hmm.
and engaging with people. And because I think that it can be really hard for a lot of people with disabilities to get out and about, depending on where accessible housing is in their community or what transportation is like in their area. It's a real hurdle, multiple hurdles. And I think that just being able to be out and seen is important. And when you're not seen, then you're forgotten about, and people don't include you in big decisions and policy. And I think that this pandemic could have been a real threat to that progress that a lot of people have made in being integral parts of the community. But thank God for technology and computers and Zoom and like podcasts. So I'm
Yes.
so glad that you are out there and doing the work that you're doing and really seeing this moment as an opportunity like I do.
Thank you. And it's what you said is so true about uh, it's important for people with disabilities to be seen and out in the community, just so people know that we're here, that we
Yeah.
exist. So, and again, that's how, as you said, that's how policies are made and how changes are made, because a certain population, people with disabilities, exist. So therefore we need more services and more programs for people with disabilities, because they are in our communities. So
Yeah.
again, and like you said, with the pandemic, having to shelter in place and having to stay in more often than a person without a disability may have had to, because the pandemic and this virus has definitely impacted the disability community in such large numbers. So, and hearing that and being aware of that, I stayed in a lot more often. I wasn't going to the store every week. I was going every 3 weeks or
Hmm.
so, where I was letting family and friends pick up
Yeah.
stuff for me from the store and dropping it off, and or having groceries delivered, to limit my exposure to the outside world. But at the same time, there is that fear that it really, possibly got, it wasn't a good thing that we weren't out and about, because you don't want to be the forgotten uh,
Right.
population there, and to see how this pandemic has impacted those who have disability. So I'm really glad you brought that up. That's a very important piece to mention for sure. But yeah, so again, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, and I'll definitely be in touch with you soon.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Our View podcast. Leave us a review wherever you listen and let us know what you liked about this episode. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and be sure to follow us on all social media platforms for more disability related content at Our View for Life. That's OURVIEW, the number 4 LIFE. If you listen to this episode on your phone, take a screenshot and post it to your Instagram or Facebook stories and be sure to tag us. We thank you for listening and take care.